afternoon. Like most Telugu people, I became an engineer first and then figured life out later, right? Went to IIT Madras, did my engineering there, then became a banker after my MBA, but found my true calling in HR and HR technology. And when the TiE team actually called and invited me to talk about human capital in the age of automation, it's a topic that I'm personally very, very passionate about. And the thing with things that you're passionate about is you have a lot to say on it. But I have a short time, so I'll actually keep my presentation very, very brief. Right? And in fact, whenever you go to any startup event, you go to an entrepreneur convention, the most commonly used words are AI, machine learning, big data, and all the jazz, right? And their ability to potentially disrupt multiple sectors. And there's also a lot of news that the emergence of these technologies will actually take away jobs, will lead to loss of jobs. And there's a lot of claims around that there's a man versus machine kind of revolt going on, right? Is this all true? Are all these fears unfounded? Is there something we should worry about? That will be the focus of my presentation today. But before we dive in, I think some historical context is necessary. So those of you who hated history in school, I think you have to bear with me for the next 2-3 slides, right? All historical tech advances and innovations have usually happened in waves, or like historians like to call them, industrial revolutions, right? And there is common convergence on the fact that there have been 3 such revolutions in the past. The first one and the most well-known one is happened in the 18th and 19th century with the advent of the steam engine in Europe and America, right? Where water and steam power were used to mechanize production. It resulted in far-changing changes in society in multiple sectors like textile and iron and steel. For example, in society, before Industry 1.0, societies were primarily rural, agrarian, and feudal in nature, right? Landlords and a lot of landless peasants. Then, with the emergence of this, what happened was the worker/labor class got established, and societies became much more urban. It also actually led to the creation of some of the world's first companies. The East India Company that all of us Indians know really, really well about is actually a byproduct of that era. Then moving on to the second one. The second industrial revolution happened in the late 1800s and the early 1900s, right? Where electric power was harnessed to actually generate mass production. And some of the things that we take granted for now, the telephone, the light bulb, and the internal combustion engine were all functions of that era, right? And the most iconic image of the second industrial revolution was, I think, Henry Ford's moving assembly line, right? Which actually gave automobiles to the masses. And the third one happened in the 1980s to now, where the transition from analog, mechanical, and electrical devices happened to digital technology. And the personal computer, the internet, and the mobile phone are all remnants from that era, right? And in terms of society, it also led to the rise of the knowledge worker, and which led to the expansion of the middle class. So what's next, right? So should we wait for So historically, all the revolutions have happened a century apart. So do we just wait for the next one to happen? So in the World Economic Forum in 2016, right, a lot of experts sat down and decided that the fourth one is already here. It actually came much faster than expected. And it is substantially different from the ones that came before. How? Because the fourth one is a fusion of multiple things, of technology straddling the physical, digital, and biological worlds. And all these fancy terms that you hear about, right, AI, machine learning, big data, robotics, and all the jazz, are all elements of this fourth industrial revolution. And like I said, it's much, much different. For example, till Industry 3.0, machines were used in factories, right? They were better than humans in the sense they were able to consistently produce goods at a better quality, at a much faster rate, without probably taking the need for a biobake or something. But they still need to be manned or womaned by somebody, right? So people need to still set, operate, and run them. The human element continued to be very, very important. The fourth one is very different because it's the first time in history that machines have intelligence, and the implications are staggering, right? Just to give you a use case from the automobile sector, right? You go to an Audi showroom in Germany, right? A computer automatically records your data, comes up with a rolling demand forecast for the entire year, and sends a schedule to the plant for the next week. And automatically, the supplier gets a memo saying you have to supply these parts to the plant. All these get supplied, and there's an automated assembly line which puts the parts together to create a car, and it's sent to dispatch. All with nil or minimal human involvement. that is both awe-inspiring and very, very scary, right? Like I said, the fourth industry 4.0 has other implications as well. First, the rate of change is rapid. What is established as a business model yesterday is no longer relevant today. Companies that had life cycles of 30 years in the past, till a decade and a half ago, the life cycle have shrunk to less than a decade, right? And say, if you compare actually the world's most valuable companies in 2006 and 2016, only one remains in that list, that is ExxonMobil, right? And actually 2017, ExxonMobil has actually moved out of that list, right? That is the rate at which companies are changing. And very, very importantly, it's important to note that out of the top 6 companies on the list in 2016, 5 of them are technology or software companies, which leads me to the next implication. That is that software is actually taking over the world. You should believe it to be true because now the world's largest transportation company has no cars. The world's largest hospitality firm has no rooms. Some of the world's largest retailers, Amazon and Alibaba, have no storefronts. Right? And let me again give you an example from the automobile sector, right? Electric cars. People still think of them as fads. But the expectation from a lot of industry analysts is that 60% of the vehicles 10 years hence will be electric vehicles because they're 85% efficient as compared to a 20% efficiency in internal combustion engine. They only have 100 moving parts as compared to 1500 moving parts in an internal combustion engine. They're here to stay. And when the guy leading the effort on the electric car front, he runs his company like a software company, right? He sends a patch every 15 days and a new feature in the car gets added. And when you think of a manufacturing conglomerate, right? When you close your eyes and think about one, the first company that comes to mind is GE. And GE's vision that was set by Jeffrey Immelt in 2012 was, we want to become a software company, right? That. So in this age of disruption, in this age of automation, what are the implications for human capital? Right? So I have a friend who's a hardware entrepreneur, right? He had actually gone to China to visit Foxconn 3 years ago. So he visited a factory that was like 1 kilometer long and half a kilometer wide. And it had, I think it was brimming with people 3 years ago. And he actually went and visited the same plant 6 months ago. The plant was completely quiet, it was empty, it was completely dark. So he actually asked the supervisor, hey, what happened? Did you shut the plant down? The supervisor just went and turned the lights on, and there were actually robots getting their work done. Right? And I'll again give you some numbers there, right? The fully blended cost of a robot in the US now is $5 per hour. You know what the minimum wage in the US is in all states? It's $9 per hour. And in states like Seattle and New York, they're actually asking for $15 an hour. So the US is no longer competitive. And the day is not very far away when we might not be competitive and where actually manufacturing jobs might go back to the West again. Take again the service sector in India. It's actually a large generator of jobs, right? Again, the day is not very far away where delivery boys will get replaced by drones and drivers will get replaced by driverless cars. Believe me, it is not very far. And I think the World Bank actually recently released a report that says that 47% of US jobs and 35% of UK jobs are at risk due to automation. So when I actually say all these numbers out, a lot of my friends ask me, yeah, you're just panicking. For India, it's actually too far away. So what do you guys think? You think India is immune? I don't think so. You take the IT sector, for example. A lot of the pink slips that you saw here this year, right, for on account of automation. You take the banking sector, one of the largest employers of organized manforce in the country. So since 15 years, right, since the last 15 years, SBI's balance sheet has grown by 20 times. And its profitability has grown by 12 times. You know what its man-force count has increased by? A big 0. And it is expected that it will not increase for the next 5 years and it can actually triple its balance sheet without any expansion. And the same World Bank report that gave out the numbers for the US and UK, for India, they said that the number is going to be 69% of jobs at risk on account of automation. That is very, very scary. And like I said, I'm not here to create fear, I'm not here to create panic, I'm just stating the reality of the ground unless we act on it. So what can we do? Right? What can we as individuals do? What can we as companies do? Just believe me, it's not all doom and gloom. Right? There is a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. And so again, Mr. Wagis mentioned that I run a company called Darwinbox, right? There's in fact a reason behind the name. in big black bold letters at the Darwinbox entrance, we have this quote by Charles Darwin. He said that in the 1700s, but it is more relevant now than ever before. And it says it's not the strongest of the species that survives, not the most intelligent. It is the one that is most responsive to change. And I think that is something we as individuals and companies have to embrace fully. If you've learned a skill and you've done it for the last 30 years, and it's no longer relevant, you better learn a new one. There's no other way. Likewise with companies, right? Goals that you set at the start of the year are no longer relevant at mid-year. So this is what I tell all my HR friends, that you hire for a competency called change embracement, right? Every leadership and every leader in the company should have that competency. If people don't have that competency, the company will never do. It's very, very important. Likewise, I said that a lot of jobs are getting automated. But likewise, jobs are also getting created. There are a lot of jobs of the future, like data scientists, medical services, etc. If you actually compare the characteristics of the jobs that are getting replaced with the ones that are of the future, one thing becomes very, very clear, right? Jobs that are rule-based, jobs that are repeatable, they will get automated. Jobs that involve the right half of the brain, from which stems creativity, intuition, strategic thinking, logic, they will never go away. They will always remain, right? So, which is why the most important thing to do is to invest in yourself. In fact, this recalls a very, very interesting incident, right? I think Warren Buffett was at a college event. I think he was delivering the valedictory address or something like that, where actually a student stood up and asked him, "Hey Warren, I have some money. What is the best investment I can make?" So Warren Buffett stood up and said, "You invest it in yourself. You get yourself a great education." I think that is what we have to do. If you have to prepare for the future, keep reinvesting in yourself. That is the best possible investment. There's no other way. Likewise, for companies, you have to invest in the L&D function for your employees to be ready. So I think, which is again something that I keep evangelizing a lot about to HR people in the community, keep investing in the L&D function. It's very, very important. And lastly, investment in technology. I think like Mr. Varghese mentioned, right? We have three great investors. We have Mr. Mohandas Pai, Lightspeed Venture Partners and India Partners. And more than investors, they're actually like mentors. And actually they keep giving a bunch of advice. But one common advice they keep giving us every time was technology is the only investment that will give you non-linearity in returns. There is nothing else. So even if you have to over-invest there, that's okay. Just do it. Which is why you actually see in a lot of traditional organizations nowadays, people are investing in CTOs. You take the Tata Group, you take Hindalco, Aditya Birla, multiple other groups are actually getting technology consultants or CTOs on board. Because, like I said, it's very, very important to be relevant. I think, which is what actually I had to say. I wanted to keep it short, so thank you.